The Union Minister for Women and Child Development, Maneka Gandhi, has proposed to set up a panel of 4 retired judges to look into cases of sexual harassment and assault that have dominated social media. The Me Too movement is spreading, and in a statement made today, the Minister, Maneka Gandhi, said, and I quote, "I believe in the pain and trauma behind every single complaint. Cases of sexual harassment at work must be dealt with a policy of zero tolerance," end of quote. So how will this panel work? We saw the Justice Verma Committee being created after the Nirbhaya incident, which led to significant changes in the laws related to sexual crimes. But what is going to be the implication of this 4-member committee that the government intends to set up? We don't have any further details, the minister not spelling them out. Joining us now to take that discussion forward, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, Indira Jaising, also Senior Advocate Geeta Luthra, and we'll be joined by Sonal Mattu in just a second. Ms. Jaising, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Let me start by asking you, ma'am, we've got the Prevention of Sexual Harassment law that basically looks at sexual harassment of women at the workplace. We also have the IPC. Now, the rape law is very, very different. Each of these laws has a different statute as far as limitation is concerned of time. Now, this 4-member panel that the government intends to set up, and that's all we know from the minister, of 4 retired judges, how can they address this issue?
Yeah. Fortunately, as you yourself mentioned in the introduction, we have a few precedents to go by. As you rightly point out, we had the Verma Committee, which ended in very substantive changes to the law. So let me tell you how it works. The point is that any government has the authority under the Constitution to set up a fact-finding committee to inform itself about a given issue, a given problem, and to make recommendations what is the way forward. So one thing is very clear, that the findings of a committee of this kind are recommendatory in nature. And after the recommendations come in, it is up to the government to decide, think about it, what to do, what not to do. But I would expect that there would be recommendations for law reform, and more importantly, I would expect that the committee would be able to identify where things have gone wrong, despite the existence of a law, what kind of patterns of sexual harassment have emerged from narratives which have come out in the Me Too movement, and try and identify who should be held responsible. This would be my expectation from the committee. Okay, so you believe that this would work as a fact-finding commission? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am. There's one thing I would like to, there's one thing, of course, I would like to say, and that is the success of this committee will depend upon the people who are appointed to be the fact-finders, to be the judges, to be the committee who will look into these issues. And it's they who will have to inspire the confidence of women to come forward and to speak before a committee like this. If the people appointed do not inspire that kind of confidence, it will be a non-starter. So, as you rightly point out, we're waiting to see who will be appointed on this committee. Or what the terms of reference, in fact, will be for this committee, because at this point in time, all we have is a comment or a statement from the Minister, Maneka Gandhi. So let me go across to Geeta Luthra. Geeta, what would your expectation be? And again, I point out that the details are very sketchy. Another remark made by the Minister was that this committee of 4 retired judges will conduct public hearings. Now, what would you interpret that to mean?
See, I think... I don't think much purpose will be served. I know that the Me Too movement is going great guns, and in a sense it's breaking glass barriers. It's making people who were not speaking up have the courage to speak up, just because of the sheer volumes of people. So, you know, there is one stone in the pond, and that ripple has an effect. So there are many people who are speaking up, and I'm very pleased about that. But I don't think you can have a public hearing like that. Firstly, issues like this are not something which necessarily a person wants to be subjected to in a public hearing, examination and cross-examination. Now the question is, if the committee that is being intended is just to oversee the law and whether the sexual harassment at workplace law is adequate, then according to me, the law is adequate. Its implementation till now is not. The Supreme Court time and again keeps coming up everywhere and saying, sorry, this committee is not in place. Why is this place not having a committee?
I would like to respond.
Then a case comes up. A case comes up. And then when the case comes up, then suddenly everybody is rushing around. Sorry, there was no committee. Let's form a committee. Committee is not formed. So all that confusion is still in place, despite the fact that everyone is saying every place has to have a committee.
Government is talking about setting up a committee of 4 retired judges. But can the Supreme Court, for instance, would it be prudent for the Supreme Court to take suo motu cognizance of this?
Can I just respond?
You can't.
Can I respond?
You can't be having retired judges.
Yes.
They can only be a
I'm coming to you, ma'am. We lost your line.
Yes.
So one second, Ms. Luthra. Let me go across to Ms. Jaising. Ms. Jaising, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
I can hear you. Shereen, I have a very serious disagreement with what Ms. Luthra is saying over here. Excuse me, this is not just a question of lack of implementation. You asked the question, are there loopholes in the law? There are. Let me give you one simple example. Today, we are being told that editors of newspapers have committed sexual assaults, etc., with young journalists working under them. Now, my question is, where does the buck stop? Where is the law which says that the board of directors who hired that editor will be held responsible for the actions of that editor? Let me tell you that sexual harassment continues, is pervasive, because the board of directors chooses to turn a blind eye. And this is the gaping hole in the law. It is.
But ma'am, I want to, since we're talking, I understand what you're saying, and absolutely right that whether it's the owners, it's the board of directors, if they knew, which looks like this seems to be, at least in some specific instances, an open secret, then the blind eye should not have been turned. But as far as the law is concerned, ma'am, if there was no complaint filed then, and these are issues that go back 10 years or perhaps even longer. What is the liability then?
Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you. The law very specifically casts a whole chapter on what is known as duties of the employer. Regardless of whether there's a complaint or any complaint, an employer is expected to do ongoing gender audit of what's going on in the organization. They are supposed to train their supervisors, train their editors, pronounce a policy against sexual harassment at the workplace, make it known, make it a part of the contract of employment of every single person who enters that establishment, including the editor. And this is their duty regardless of whether somebody makes a complaint or doesn't make a complaint. They have to make sure that there is no hostile work environment in the workplace. Now, let me give you one simple example. I want to give you a simple example. We are all aware of the case of Terry. We all know that there was a complaint against Pachauri. I will tell you that I had personally written a letter to every member of the board of directors, very, very eminent board. I had also written to the then minister, drawing their attention to the fact that this was going on. And mind you, this was after a complaint was filed. There was a deafening silence. So let's not hide this issue under the carpet. The fact of the matter is that a person's in high places, persons in authority, and let me tell you, the complaint doesn't have to come from the affected woman. It can come from a trade union.
Absolutely.
It can come from any other person. Or it can come from the personal knowledge of the employer that there is a hostile work environment in this workplace and they are duty bound to act on it. That's where the buck
Absolutely. That.
And secondly, Shereen,
And the law very clearly states that. Yes.
Let me tell you something of great importance. Let me tell you that the law as it stands today places no obligation on an employer to pay monetary compensation to a woman whose entire life has been ruined. Compensation, if any, under the law is payable by the harasser. Now, I am of the opinion that one way to stop what is going on is to claim multi-million dollar or rupee damages against the directors who knowingly permit their workplaces to be polluted by sexual harassment at the workplace. And there is an issue here. The reason why women don't bring these type of cases to court is because they have to pay exorbitant court fees on a suit of this kind. I demand that immediately court fees must be waived on a... So there's a lot going on in which all of us have been complicit. It's time to end that impunity. So it's not just a question of non-implementation. What can a committee do? Tell me, what can the committee do? They report to the board of directors. The buck has to stop with the board of directors. And they have to be held directly responsible for what's going on in their workplaces.
No.
Well, I have to agree with both of you that the time has come to put a stop to the kind of instances that have come to light, courtesy the Me Too movement. And yes, the provisions of the law are fairly stringent. Implementation is the order of the day. And some of the suggestions, and I think those were some of the recommendations, for instance, on monetary damages that Justice Verma and his commission had also recommended. As I pointed out, we don't have further clarity on what the government intends to do. But speaking of the government, MJ Akbar continues to be a minister, and no statement so far has come in from the government on what it intends to do with Mr. Akbar. But for this evening, Indira Jaising and Geeta Luthra, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18.